Hi everyone, my name is Eugene Akulic. Welcome to the Career Jedi YouTube channel. I'll be helping you to choose, start, grow, change, and finish your professional career. Today we'll be speaking about one of the most important steps in building a successful career. This is making the right career choice. Although choosing one's career is one of the most important steps in a person's lives, similar to choosing your life partner, so many people don't make it right. If you look at statistics across US, UK, Europe, Australia, and other countries, you will see that between 40 and 60% of young professionals do not work in the area of their field of study, meaning they have spent 5, maybe 6 years of their life, invested a lot of time, effort, and money not to be working eventually, not to be capitalizing on the knowledge that they've got when they have to restart everything. When I look at my personal experience as a coach, and I've worked with hundreds of people on the subject of career choices, many more people actually do not dare to change their chosen track right away. Instead, they choose to suffer for a couple years, sometimes for over a decade, only to arrive at the age of 35 to 40 and finally daring to tell themselves this is not the right career path for them and the choices were wrong. So that number of 40 to 60% may be a huge understatement. This is a massive problem on so many levels. If you look on the personal level, that's pretty obvious. You have spent 5 years of your life invested into something that you're not using or only partially using later on in your life. So much wasted effort. But what if you're taking a loan for your education? That makes things even worse. Also, another problem on a personal level is that you have to start pretty much from square one. So all those 5 years that you could have accumulated knowledge and skills that could propel you in your new career when you started, this is all wasted. And you have to catch up with others who have made their choice correctly, who have spent those 4 to 6 years actually on the things that they will be capitalizing on. And you have to do it really fast if you want to get a good job, if you want to have a nice career start, if you want to get promotions and so on and so forth. So eventually that leads to doubling that cost. And I'm not even talking about the stress that it puts on you. This also creates a lot of problems on the educational system level. Just imagine all these universities, colleges, institutions of higher education, they have to allocate a lot of resources, teachers, labs, equipment, and so on and so forth, depending on where is the demand from the students. And then eventually they're spending your money or taxpayers' money, or both, on something that has at best 50% efficiency. I wouldn't be happy with such efficiency in business. So unfortunately, government institutions would tolerate such a thing on a systematic level. If we think about the other actors in these companies, they have to deal with a lot of extra costs as well. Of course, if you talk about the top companies that can afford attracting the top talent that is motivated, that have made right choices, and so on and so forth, they're probably fine. But the majority of economy is composed not of these top couple percent of companies. The majority of economy is actually suffering from this as well. Why? Because they have to take the graduates with higher degree, but actually probably not from the field of study that matches the job description of the position they're trying to hire that graduate. What they have to do in this situation, they have to invest a lot of time into upskilling. And there's a lot of hidden costs in this. There's a direct cost. These companies have to pay for extra trainings, but also there's a lot of indirect costs because these new hire will be less effective, bringing less business results, and therefore the company will generate less profits. Another hidden cost here is actually cost of churn, because if you are getting even somebody from the field of study that matches the job description, but this person realizes after some time that this is actually not what he or she wanted to do in their life, they leave. And then the replacement cost, finding another candidate, training, retraining these people, also impacts the cost base of the companies. So eventually, we are paying with that because those costs are transferred through pricing into the goods and services that we are buying with you today. So on the overall economy level, what we have here is a lot of inefficiencies, misallocation of funds, high unemployment levels, lower productivity in the economy. So I think this is good enough reason to really look into this and try to understand where it is coming from. So to understand where it's coming from, we need to understand how people are making the decisions about their future career. I've looked into some research papers and also meta-research papers. So these are the studies that look into the other studies and summarize the conclusions and look for consistency and patterns. So most of them speak about several factors that influence one's choice of a future career. Number one is the influence of a significant figure in your life. It could be family, including parents in the first place, but also elder brothers, cousins, and so forth, close friends, peers, and in recent years, this is social media influencers as well. There we have two mechanisms that kick in. The first one is the pressure mechanism. This is when your family, your parents or brothers, etc., they create some kind of pressure of all kinds. That could be through setting some expectations, through some manipulations, direct orders, sometimes manipulating you or blackmailing young people with funding, and so on and so forth. So then kids, graduates, they decide to subdue to these expectations, to these demands, and they choose not what they really like, but actually what someone else wants from them. Another subset here, another mechanism that kicks in here is actually setting the role model. Your family may not be pressuring you, they may not be blackmailing you or manipulating you in another way, but you may have a role model in your life. So let me tell my personal story. When I was somewhere around 9th grade, I thought that I will be an interpreter. Why? Because from all the family and friends that I've seen out there, who were typically engineers at the time, they were not getting much. Their lives were boring and dull. And one of my cousins was an interpreter. He graduated from a linguistic university, and he was working with a lot of international delegations with the United Nations and so on and so forth. So I thought, wow, this is a cool career. So I invested a lot of time in studying languages because I realized if I want to be an interpreter and have this cool life, I need to be able to translate, I need to know the languages, and I doubled down on English. And actually switched away my energy resources from STEM subjects, which now I regret, to be honest. Then 1 year later, at our school, we had a visit by a true, real UN executive. I still remember her name, Elsa Holstedt. She came to our school. She was from United Nations Development Program, and she told us an amazing story how she spent 6 or 7 years of her life in Africa working on a set of projects trying to solve the problem of child mortality because of malnutrition. And they first started by giving more food. Then they realized that parents actually, when they received free food, they stopped growing the food themselves. That wasn't working. Instead, they started collecting money to educate these farmers how to produce more food. Well, that worked, but there was another problem. These farmers produced so much food they couldn't store it because the storage facilities were not good enough to keep those crops, that food, in a proper shape throughout the winter season. So 90% of that perished. So next year, what they did, they built storage facilities, but unfortunately the electricity sources were not reliable, so storage facilities were not working most of the year, and again most of the crops perished. So next year they invested into buying some diesel generators, but unfortunately the diesel supply wasn't also very stable, so they kind of had to fix that as well. But after 6 and 7 years of trial and error, they found a system that helped reduce the child mortality in that region of Africa by 90%. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want to be doing in my life. So I approached her and said, hey, how can I get to the United Nations? And she said, well, you have to probably study international relations. And that's why I chose that as my field of study, but I'm not working there. The next big group of factors that influence people's decisions based on all these studies is actually cultural context. So that is the set of norms like that can be based in your religion, in the tradition of your country or of the country of your origin and descent of your parents, or of your host country if your family have moved somewhere, but also the subcultures that prevail in this neighborhood, in that school, among your peers, and so on and so forth. So how does it work? Well, there could be some taboos that are set up by your religion. Some things are considered to be not okay. So some careers could be perceived better than others, and therefore that influences your choice that is not actually yours anymore. So the next group of factors is very interesting. Studies say that this is all about your personal interests and your personal capabilities and skills. When I did my own deep dive study of this topic, I spoke to around 40 people about how they chose their career. And those who said, well, I was guided by my skills, what I liked, my interests, my hobbies, but also where I was good at. We tried to explore with them what was the root cause, what was driving their preferences, their likes and dislikes, and what was driving their performance in different subjects. And one pattern emerged. I found out that in most cases, that was the personality of the teacher that was a defining factor in whether the student liked the subject and was good at it. And if you think about this, that makes a lot of sense. Working as a tutor with students, with high school students and university students, I could see that pretty much in any subject, a person can excel. Even if it's a rocket science. But you need to find the key to the motivation of that student, and you also need to find a way to explain things in a very clear way so that that person understands it. What also is important is the attitude. If the attitude is nice and positive, a student is likely to reciprocate and get more energy, put more energy into a subject and to the studying, going an extra mile. They'll be looking forward for that lesson and so on and so forth. So from many different angles, we can see that the personality of the teacher and whether there was a chemistry between the teacher and the student defines what the students like, so their interests, and also where they're good at, or at least where they get good marks. Because if the teacher likes the students, they probably can grade them higher in non-objective situations, like when there is no test. So I know that the educational system is trying to fight it by introducing and throwing more tests at students, which I believe is the wrong way to approach this. And the last group of factors is actually about job perceptions. So these are all the things, how students perceive their future jobs. And I think this is very important because when you're at high school, you need to know enough information about the market out there, about different jobs, and you need to understand what it's really like being working there. So because students haven't worked there, they haven't been on the inside, they can only look at the outside and they look at some external features of the job. For example, whether this person is dressed well, whether they drive a good car, whether they enter a fancy business center, and so on and so forth. And they make their conclusion whether this job is cool, prestigious, whether they'd like to work in this office, and so on and so forth. Another important external dimension of this is the remuneration and compensation and benefits. So they see that if somebody earns a lot of money, they drive a cool car, they see, hey, are you working as a banker? So I'd like to become a banker. But unfortunately, in this case, if you don't really like banking, but you just like high pay, what it's going to lead to is that, yes, you may earn a lot of money, but you're going to be really unhappy and willing and looking for changing your job a couple of years into your career. Well, this is what the science says and the studies and my personal experience, but I'm very much interested in your experience and your stories. So please put your stories into the comments to this video. I want to understand what influenced your career choices. How did you make it? Are you happy with your current career? Do you like what you're doing? Have you changed your career? And so on and so forth. So please put it into the comments to this video. But wait, we have all these kind of systems in place to support students. Like we have career counselors, we have psychologists, and so on and so forth. We have access to the internet. Well, there is a fundamental problem with this system. So if you look at the career counselors at schools, and I'm not trying to cast a shadow on all of them because there are some very good specialists, but I don't think that people who really understand how the labor market works, how different companies operate, what are the skills required, and so on and so forth. People with this skill set and knowledge typically work with other kind of candidates in more lucrative parts of the market. They work as headhunters, they work in HR agencies, and so on and so forth. So problem number one is that career counselors lack the knowledge of what it is really like working in the modern business, what is required, what are the skills that are needed there, what is life, what is good, what is bad, and so on and so forth. Second problem, when you look at the psychologists, they typically run a set of tests to understand your preferences, what are you good at, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, these test results are often used in the wrong way. Not to understand your starting point and then look at what is required and where is the gap and how you can close it. But actually by putting you in the box and saying, hey, you're sociable, you're energetic, etc., so you must be liking working with people, maybe you have to go and work in the sales area. Or maybe you're very creative, therefore you have to go and get an arts degree. So this is my view why these systems fail to provide the adequate support to the graduates, and that they cannot prevent us from having that structural problem that I just described in the beginning of this video. So your question can be, so what can we do about this? What is the right way to make a career choice? For that, stick with our channel and we'll find some answers in the next video.